Hello, so it's Wim from top left. I'm here with James Davis from C-Level in APAC, and we're in our series going back and forth about project management in the MSP world. Last time we dug into the handoff from sales to service management or project delivery, pitfalls with that and how to make that really smooth for a great client experience, and setting up our engineering team and our project managers to win. Today we kind of bantered some ideas of what to talk about and really digging into how projects are delivered. So yeah, welcome James. James, welcome back.
Thanks, Wim. It's been fun. We've been talking about a lot about the setting up projects for success, but now we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of normally when the wheels really start falling off is when we're starting to actually do the work. So if we've set up our scoping right and we've got a project plan there and we've done a nice handover from sales to projects, now this is where all the magic is supposed to happen, but we don't do very well, do we, normally? So hopefully we can share some nuggets of golden wisdom today that might help people get unstuck. And I think what better place to get into the nitty-gritty than starting off with some of our weaknesses in our PSAs. That's where it all starts going wrong. And I know we've mentioned this before, but this is where our project teams usually start creating new different solutions that are disconnected from our PSAs, and they lose a lot of the direction and the data that they could have to start managing the work properly. So I know from my perspective as being inside an MSP and coaching a lot of MSPs on how to use their PSAs, there's only so much you can do with utilizing the PSA itself. It's clunky. And there is a reason, there's a legitimate reason why a lot of the project people start looking for better solutions around it. And from my perspective, when I was managing projects myself, the hardest thing was just to visualize where everything was up to. In all the PSAs that I've ever come across, there's no big picture project view that can easily show where we're up to, how much is left to do, what we need to do next. And that's where most of our problems start, even once we've got good project templates. Do you see the same? Am I crazy?
Oh, no, totally the same. Seen it in my MSPs and with our clients in top left. And it seems like, or at least with ConnectWise, the project management hasn't evolved since we started using it over 10 years ago. Like there's no new features, nothing. So that's where I see MSPs, even ourselves, we're using wiki documents, SharePoint files, Excel, Trello. People are using Microsoft Planner or Asana to help with that and managing who's doing what's the next step, all those things. It's so redundant. And if you're doing it within the PSA, it just seems to be a lot of clicks. You have to drill into the project list. Okay, what is this project? What's the scope? Different tickets, different phases. And yeah, just even with more than a few projects, it just gets really hard. And it's hard for people to know what to do next. So from the project manager experience is poor, but from the technicians, they have a list of tickets and hard to know what to do next. So you end up scheduling tickets. But that requires a good estimate, and that's hard. So now you have a coordinator trying to guess how long it's going to take, but they don't know what has to be done. They're not technical. Monitoring is hard to see what's the exception because it doesn't flag what's neglected or falling behind or who's overloaded. So it's not setting up people to win. If they're really good with it, maybe they're P&P and really good with mature project management, perhaps they can do it. But very few MSPs have that. It's technicians they're kind of like tag you're it, now you're the PM, and they don't have the training or the tools or the mindset to do it.
Yeah, 100% agree. It's that visualization more than anything. Like you said, scheduling it in, that can be a good thing or it can be a very bad thing. And when we're unorganized and, like you said, not having good estimations of how we're working, which we often don't, and we spoke about the scoping, that we generally don't scope very well to create the work plans in the first place. But scheduling in, all it does is create more clicks, more work for everyone else as well. And that becomes more and more of an excuse of why we don't want to use the PSA and why all the projects people start using all the shadow IT in their environments to try and make it work. And they get the job done, but we lose all this data. Like a lot of the time, like everyone starts using that as an excuse for not entering time against the projects. So we don't have that big high level, are we profitable in what we're doing or not? And even if they do, it usually ends up being like 1 or 2 tickets to lump all the time together, and we don't actually know how long different tasks take. So then that doesn't help push back into our scoping, and it's a vicious cycle of we just keep doing the same things over and over again, and there's no reviewing of what we can do better. So the more that we can push to use the PSA and make it easier,
Yep.
the better high level project delivery we're going to be able to get. And that's where this challenge starts coming in of how do we use the PSAs? And I think the first point more than anything is the right ticket setup, right? Like that's usually where the big issues start coming in outside of the scheduling and all the sort of minute details. It's usually we'll either create way too large of tickets that will stay open the whole time the project's open, so we never know it's done. Or they're way too small. We have like hundreds of tickets inside of a project where there's a lot of overlapping tasks. So the tech, even if they're going in with the right attitude that they want to enter the time, there might be 5 tickets open that they've done for the one job. So do they split it up and put their time across for each ticket? Like where do we put it? And it's too confusing. So I know you've dealt with this a lot. Like what do you usually look at when you're looking at the ticket setup?
I'm looking for a single piece flow where somebody can grab one ticket and work on it and be done. So that is very clear. They're set up, it's ready to work. And so they can start it, finish it. They don't have to put it back on the back burner, put it back in the backlog, and work on another one. They can start it, finish it, and move on. So it's the right size, that it's not no more than 1 or 2 days worth of work. If it's getting larger and if it's 40 hours, that's probably a sign that it should be broken down into smaller tickets that one person can do. Or maybe it can be split across multiple people that way. So one ticket, action oriented, not vague, like stabilize the network. Like maybe on the sales proposal, you say, hey, we're going to stabilize your network and fix all the issues. But in your project, you got to break it down that people can actually do those individual things. So having a checklist, literally answering the question of done when, bullet point. We're done this ticket when these 5 or 10 things are done. And it could just be written in the description of the ticket, or you put it on the checklist, on the task list on that ticket. So that estimation and estimating those things, that's a step in our project delivery process that we can itemize, we can identify the things that have to be done at a more macro level. You put in the backlog, and then as we get closer to doing it, and it might be like a month down the road, as we get closer, then we're going to break down that ticket so that it's ready for somebody to work. So it starts off in the backlog as, hey, we know we need to spend 10 or 20 hours on this project, but we don't know exactly what has to be done. When it gets closer to that time, it will be spelled out and then put into an engineer's backlog. So these are some of the agile, lean, Kanban approaches of break it down, visualize the work, one thing at a time, no multitasking, quick feedback on things. And that makes it a lot easier to monitor, and people don't get overwhelmed as quick.
And this is what a lot of the solutions that, even if the text can't articulate it, this is what they're trying to achieve by default. So when you can put the sort of frameworks you're talking about in place, the guys will gravitate to it because that's what they're trying to achieve. They just don't normally tie it back to that framework and create a proper structure and repeatable process around this. I've seen it work once that happens, and we go back to what you said, done when. That's a huge problem in projects, that we don't actually know when something's complete because we leave it so open-ended and vague, and you're tapping into the psyche of a tech who aims for perfection and solving every single problem. But if it's vague, they're just going to try and solve everything instead of going back to that checklist approach of looking at, well, what are the 5 things that are needed to have gotten done for this particular type of work that I'm doing? And if we've got that, then it becomes a lot clearer, and the backlog with this methodology starts clearing itself. It gets clogged up because they don't know when to finish, and the work just keeps piling up and up and up, even if they're doing good work, and they've probably completed it, the stuff that they needed to do, but they're aiming for 100% because they don't know anything different to that.
Yeah.
So even if you've got a good high level scope, what's important, like you said, is like clarifying what work's supposed to be done, coming closer to when the work's actually coming. Because the texts themselves aren't going to look big picture. They know that, they always know if they're working in projects, if you're doing well at sales, they're always going to be busy. It's the same as a help desk. The work's not going away, so they don't need to worry about what's coming up in a month or 2 months. They need to know what's coming up today, tomorrow, the next day. So they've got a clear head so they can proactively manage these and juggle these tasks to get done. And I think the checklist is a very important and underutilized tool in our project management in MSPs.
Yeah.
Nothing's better than a clear checklist. Have I done this? Have I done that? Have I done this? Because like you were saying, the monitoring becomes easier then as well. Because if you're trying to monitor for success of work as a project manager, or has it been done properly, you won't know the things to check if there's not a checklist either. How can you quality control someone's work if you don't know what they were supposed to do? And it all starts there. Yeah.
Yeah.
From your experience, like you were just talking the visualization part. I know we're talking top left, but we're not here to flog top left. What difference does it really make to have that type of visualization that you guys have built out that connects into these PSAs?
What's
What's
I think like ConnectWise or HGG says is like managing to what good looks like. And so that obviously the managers, coordinators can do that, but also people are empowered to manage themselves as to they know, hey, this is our code of conduct. This is what excellence means. And that we're keeping on track. We're doing a real-time time entry. What are all the expectations that are our agreements or commitments to each other so they can actually live that out. And PSA doesn't necessarily help with that because it's not going to nag you if you've had that ticket in progress for a month. There's no warning, nothing on project work because SLAs don't apply. So with a Kanban product, you can set some rules like that of it should be moving forward. Or this is an issue. Let's talk about it and solve it. So it's so people are empowered to know, hey, I got to deal with this, or let's have a discussion in our huddle or in our weekly meeting and go through it. So there's that managing the work in progress of, hey, I should only have let's say two tickets in progress. I can't take on more work until these are done, or I got to hand these off. So yeah, so it helps managers see like, hey, this person's got 10 tickets in progress. Maybe we should help him solve these or unblock him or reduce the scope or hand it off to somebody else to move that forward. So I think it helps with communication, relationships, all of that. Seeing it, yeah.
I think what you just said there with the tech backlog, I think that's the biggest thing that we all really suffer from, and seeing it visual. The difference that I've seen. So even the people that use the PSAs and use it well, that schedule it in and manage the schedules, outside of all the extra administration components of things run backwards and like run behind time, you have to reschedule everything and move it forward. It's really hard to see in the PSAs for a project across multiple projects and the tickets, what's actually been done, what's still open, how much is there still to go, because there's just not that visibility. And what you said about a project manager being able to see it, the tech can articulate it as well. Like the techs always know they're busy, and without that visualization to say actually how much is there and how much is on their plate, it just sounds like they're whinging a lot of the time. It's just, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy. What are you busy on? Well, they don't really know most of the time, but legitimately they are busy. So having that visualization of what's in progress, what's in the backlog, starts to break it down into more manageable chunks as well, to be able to hand off to somebody else, look at the resourcing as well to say, are we even properly resourced for projects? Because most often from my experience, we're not. We're relying on in the smaller to mid-sized MSPs, you're usually relying on 1, 2, 3 people to do it with wearing multiple hats, and they have to
Yep.
juggle lots of different things. But being able to visualize that work starts to allow upper management to quantify it and actually dedicate the right resources to get the jobs done as well.
Yeah, the resourcing is interesting. Look at our team with, let's say, or one of my teams, 6 or 7 technicians, is the projects that are happening. It requires such a breadth of skills that no one person can be the project guy. It's got to be, we're pulling in different people. So it becomes that much more important to prioritize it, rank it, get it to the right people, keeping it moving forward.
It does, and I think the visualization part, and I know we're really focusing on the visualization, but really that's our main problem when we get into the nitty gritty of getting the projects done. As long as we've got like I said earlier, as long as we've got it scoped out sufficiently and we've got a decent enough work plan. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect because most of the people, for most MSPs, do a decent job. Like it's not that we're really terrible at doing the technical parts. It's usually there's little things missing, and a lot of that's just that structured approach to actually working. Once we've got our framework that we're working to and we can visualize it, a lot of those issues just go away.
Yeah, seeing it the right way, seeing the bottleneck, and often how our workflows, it's just the bottlenecks are hidden. They're there, and it depends on one engineer. That senior engineer who's been around for 10 years, he has to provide a little bit of input. So he's actually not assigned on the project, but the people on it have to go to that person for a bit of input or for a password or something. So they're waiting on him for these 5-minute quick questions. And so that's where the Phoenix Project book, I don't know if you've read that one yet. It's the one I got on my wall there. It talks about this guy, Brent, who's been there for 10 years in this company, this IT department of like 200 people, and he's the bottleneck. So they have to look at what's actually going through him. And it's often not on the books. It's not on the project management work plan, but they need his input on the VLAN design and what's up with the SAN and all these things. So they unblock that and get his brain working on the right things around automation and process. And that's how they actually save the day and keep the company alive. It's a novel format. So I know that's going on. There's something else I wanted to share and now I lost it. But the visualization. If you look at in the IT world, even with our ticket systems, we can't see where work is breaking down or queuing. For if you look at the traffic going down the highway, it's really obvious when it slows down, when there's an accident or rush hour traffic. Or if you look at, hey, a 4-way stop could be good. If you only have to wait 1 or 2 cars, no problem. But there's 100 cars waiting each direction. Hey, it's time to put a traffic light or a roundabout here. It's very obvious. If you look on use Google navigation going from another big city, it's very accurate it's going to take you an hour and 30 minutes, 31 minutes, because it looks at trends, the actual traffic and everything. They can predict that. And it's accurate within minutes. It's pretty scary. And cities can use that sort of data to make improvements. Hey, we need to improve this interchange or this turnoff. So we need those equivalents in our business looking at that as those flow problems become apparent.
And we've got to visualize it. I know I'm using the word visualize all the time, but it really is the visualization part. Like I know quite a few people that use the PSAs to the best of their ability for what the PSAs are set up. And you can get a lot done by just doing that. But those blockages, like you were saying, the bottlenecks, the only way we get notified through that is workflow rules. So the majority of the time, all you're doing is generating email noise. And if you've got a lot of projects going on, there's going to be a lot of email noise. What do you respond to? What do you need to look at? All of a sudden, again, the visualization comes back into play of well, actually, just one email telling you something's blocked might not be as important as another project that needs to happen, but you can't see the other projects inside that context as well. Even great things like bright gauge and having some gauges are fantastic, but they also have quite a lot of limitations because of the PSA as well. Like a common issue that I always come across with bright gauge as an example is managing project issues. It's a big thing, and what I've come across in the first place is most people aren't using project issues anyway, and that's why Brightgauge probably hasn't developed this stuff. But even when you're using that properly, it's very hard to visualize that component. Whereas if we're using this sort of Kanban and Agile approach, that visualization's there, and that's really what most people are doing when they're going back to the creating it in Planner or Trello or Asana type things. They add, like, funny enough, we always talk about techs being really bad at admin. I've never seen these guys be more detailed than when they've got their visualization boards going. Um, you can't get them to enter time in a dashboard, but they'll write out all the good task lists and stuff inside those visualization tools. It's just because they can see it, and that's the way the guys' brains work. So you need to tap into that to manage a lot of this flow.
Yep.
What we were talking about monitoring the flows there. What sort of things would you look for to look? What would you be looking for? What's the typical blockages that you've seen in your when you've been looking at projects?
There's a lot of things that should be monitored. One is just like the work in progress, keeping that to you're doing single piece work, one thing at a time, and making sure the time is entered every day. So if it's in your in progress and no time entered, that's an issue. Looking at if it is scheduled, like is it actually scheduled? If it's in a scheduled status but no scheduled time on it, that's an issue. Or if it's past due, looking at that. Looking at the budgets, is it at or over budget? Looking at that. Yeah, there's so much that can be done there. But I'm looking to, yeah, are these things moving forward? Because you can look at the total performance of, hey, on average, our projects are taking X weeks to get done. But that data, if you have that on your Brightgauge dashboard, those overall SLA numbers don't necessarily help you improve the flow. So we got to break it down, like what stage in the flow. And that's where like a Kanban could be as simple as to do, doing, done. That's not enough. We got to break it down like, hey, it's new, it's in the backlog, we've done the estimates, it's queued, it's ready, it's in progress, it's waiting a review, it's build, whatever. So looking from each step in that flow, and it could be 7 steps, how are we doing from between those stages and improving that? And what are the outliers, and how could we, if something took 3 times longer than expected, why is that? Skill, training, tools, different things. So there's really, I'm thinking there's so many visualizations we have, ways to monitor it in the products. But yeah, it depends on the team and the nature of the work as well.
I think what you're right. There's so many different things you can look at, but I think it all comes back to structuring the flow, doesn't it? It's this is where we fall down a lot of the times in our project deliveries. We're not actually managing it through a flow, that we're not all the things that you just mentioned around, like it's ready to go. We need to check and the estimates again. It's work in progress. It needs to be reviewed. We don't actually break project work down that way. We often do by nature in a normal service ticket, and more mature ones work to an SLA, but even immature MSPs still have a typical standard flow that they know where it breaks down, even if they don't have the data to back it up. They generally have a feeling of which part of the process is broken. But we don't have that feel in projects. It's very much a big blob of it's all the same. We don't really break it down. So actually stopping and thinking how the flow goes for individual work, and then how the flow works for like a project as a whole, that starts to let you like dive in deeper and find the problems of how to improve that. And there is so many that there's no generic, you need to just do these 5 exceptions and that's all you need to know. There is a lot to it, but just understanding that high level flow concept, I think changes a lot of the mindset in the first place.
Yeah, you made a good point there. Is looking at the flow of the tickets, but also the flow of the project, and really looking at what are those steps and how do we keep it moving. It's the pipeline concept. We want it moving forward. We don't want it going back. removing any impedance. If there's any sort of bump or gunk in that pipeline, it's going to slow it down. So how do we streamline that so it's straight through, predictable? And so you got to look at the project level. What are the steps from your sales, or even pre-sales, your proposal? You could already have it as a project in your PSA all the way through to completion. So we do have a status on our project that's, hey, it's completed but not closed. And then every month or every week they have a project review meeting to review it, kind of what's called Kaizen, review it. What could we have done better? Is there any process to update, anything to update in our sales templates, those sorts of things, and then close it. So they gave me a report of here's the lessons we learned, here's what we've implemented for next time. So it's done at the project level, but then each ticket as it's done, ideally it's moving really quick, like the engineer grabs it, it's work today, it's closed. I love to see it reviewed within 1 day. So your service ticket should have a completed review within 1 day, and your project as well. And it could be a peer review, could be a manager, another engineer, to say, hey, let's say this was like set up the monitoring on this new server. Somebody else looks at it and there's some sort of check and balance of, did he at least make notes, mention the SOP he used, checked off the stuff, the items on there? Did he put the configurations on this ticket? Hey, it's a project ticket to set up monitoring the server. Well, attach that configuration. That shows that it's in the RMM, it's in the asset management, link it through. Doesn't necessarily have to log into the tools to verify it was done, but at least that there's all the mark that it's been done. It's I think that's the example Rex gave me years ago. Is you look at a hotel, there's marks of excellence. Like they will, to show that there's a new roll of toilet paper on the toilet paper holder, they'll put that on there and they fold the ends into a little arrow or triangle. It's a mark of excellence that somebody's paid attention to the toilet paper. So you want to see that to build trust.
And that goes back to the checklists again, doesn't it? It's knowing what is expected to be done and then matching up that review checklist to those expectations.
Yeah.
And I agree. If you're doing, like, I think the configuration example is a perfect one. If we've actually attached the configurations, well, we know that we've done Doco. We know we're doing a lot of those pieces as part of that process. A lot of people lack that. Like, that's one of the big complaints I always hear from the service side is projects never do documentation. And that's because the projects aren't reviewed and documentation is always left to the end. But if we're building up that better flow of, I build a new server, I make sure that we've got it on the RMM, we make sure the configuration's there, it's in IT glue. When it's done there, we're not wasting all this time and we've already done all that information. And then, like you said, I back that 100% up as well. The review after a day, it should be a day turnaround from completion. We can pick it all up very quickly and it should be a lot less work. And we're saving a lot of this time by keeping the flow going. Where when we're stop, start, we burn way more hours than what you think. It's one of those hidden things. And it's one of those hidden things because it's mainly off the books because we're not using the PSA to enter our time as well. And we haven't built out those sort of tasks or tickets to do those processes either. So people just do them. If they're even doing them, they won't record it as that time. You'll either see it as sunk admin time or they just won't record it. And that's valuable data that you're not getting.
Yeah, I can definitely see that if they're using Excel or Trello or Planner, neither that or the PSA has 100% of the picture. So they're all like half the picture, and so you can't make good decisions. So that's why our vision on top left is get all your data in the PSA in Autotask or in ConnectWise Manage, and then we visualize on top of that so they can have good discussions and manage the flow.
What do you see like in this work actually getting the work done? We've been talking a lot about all the negatives, and a lot of what we can change to it. What do you often see as the big, like, if we've mentioned a lot, what do you think the biggest, if you could pick one thing out of all this conversation, what would you focus on as a first step to improving projects? Because I think we've said so much here. There is a lot of changes to make and a lot of understanding. Where would you point someone to start?
It depends where they're coming from. What's mine, just based on conversations I've been having with my coaches and my team in just the last couple of days. So that's where I'm answering this from right now. It's around delegating. So delegating and elevation of our team. So it's empowering our team member, our leaders, our managers, everybody throughout the organization to go higher up on that delegation model. So the model I have is from Michael Hyatt. I found this like 5-6 years ago. Level 1 is very transactional. Do as I say. So that means in this scenario, we give them a project ticket. This is exactly how you do it. Don't deviate from it. If you do, you got to go fix it. And then level 5 is, or level 3 is like, hey, find 3 options, give me a recommendation and I'll approve that, authorize that. Level 4 is go do the research, choose one, go do it and tell me what you've done. Level 5 is don't even tell me, I trust you so much. So that's where my mind at, is how do we get people higher up that ladder? And if they're new and they're junior, yeah, we're gonna have to tell them exactly what to do, but really quickly, we want them thinking in a way that's safe. Like we don't dump them into a level 5 and give them the keys to the castle and do whatever you want, carte blanche, however you say that. So that's where my mind is. How do we hire smart people? Let's get out of their way, set them up to win, give them guidelines. So this is a lot of leadership, coaching, empowering people, giving them authority, respecting them as a person that they can think through it. Asking the right questions that get them thinking, because they have the answers in themselves. We don't have to give them all the answers. We don't have to solve all the problems. We don't have to think through everything. And us thinking that we've got more experience and more skill, that actually we're in the way.
I think that's fantastic advice. I think to enable that, where I'd say someone should start is like map out the flow. And I think what you just said ties into that really well, is if we can map out the flow of how the project should flow and how the tickets should flow and potential blockages, that delegation is already started. That like, here's the expectations of what we're doing and we understand it together. Then it becomes more obvious of what we need to delegate off, and it gives a sort of a sandpit for everyone to play in, and a common way of working. And I think that sort of direction starts to get you the right answers, because everything we've gone through today individually is probably going to make a difference in an MSP in their project space. There's very few MSPs that really do projects very well. So there's so many of these points today that we've spoken about that will make a difference. But I think start high and think about the people and work in that delegation and mentoring. And a lot of these problems will start to align themselves and can be a lot more focused of solving any of the specific areas, because as we mentioned, if you know the flow and map it and visualize it, you know where the break points are. So that's what I'd leave everyone off with today, is step back, take a breath, let's map it out.
Yeah, give them a flow to work in, so that they can flesh out the tickets, they can define the done wins, they can be improving their process. So this is, the flow, the accountability, elevating respect for people. And then later on comes the visual management, those sorts of things. I love tools, love visuals, but I think the flow and the conversations, the accountability, the leadership comes first. And that's both on the employee side and the manager side. It's both. So we have to elevate our leaders to have better conversations with their direct reports, and then elevating our people to find the real solution. The people doing the work are the best suited to come up with the ideas to improve the flow. That's lean thinking in a nutshell there.
It's so true. We've just got to give the right frameworks and context to people so they can talk to it. That's always, like, the guys working on the front line will have all the answers. They just won't know how to articulate it or know that there is necessarily a problem until the framework and context is put there, and it just opens up the conversation.
Yeah. So. Good. Well, I think that's a good spot to wrap it up there for this week. And next week we'll continue, perhaps around the communication with clients.
I think that'll be a great topic to go. I think this is a great session, and we could talk for hours and hours in this nitty-gritty part. But I think
Yep.
we've covered all the high level stuff. So let's catch up again and let's talk communication.
Good. All right. Well, have a good weekend, and hopefully next week, and we'll continue the series. Had
Thanks
a lot
very
of
much.
fun digging into that and learn from each other and share stories. So
Thanks for having me, and thanks for everyone for watching. Hopefully you get
Yep.
something out of it.
Yep. Thank you.